If this story hits somewhere real, hit like, share it, and subscribe. It genuinely helps more than you know. She was already talking before I'd finished closing the door. No greeting, no pause to read the room. Just her standing in the kitchen doorway with her arms folded and a plastic container on the counter between us, her voice carrying that specific sharpness that doesn't announce itself as an attack but lands like one. "You left the lunchbox in the sink, again." I set my keys down in the bowl by the door. My boots were still on, 12 hours behind me, and the first sentence I was offered in my own home was about a container. "I rinsed it before I left," I said. "It still smells." I looked at the kitchen. The counters were clean. The dishes were put away. Every surface spotless except for the one item she'd chosen to center the evening on. "I can rinse it now," I said. "That's not the point." "Then help me understand what the point is, Diana." She shifted her weight, the way she did when the real argument was still loading and she needed a moment to find the words for it. "The point is I'm done being the only one who notices things around here. I'm done being the only one who cares." I hung my jacket on the rack by the door. She glanced at it like I'd done something deliberately significant. "You know I always leave it on the hook behind the door," she said. "I know you prefer it there," I replied, keeping my voice level. "I prefer the rack. Everything's a compromise with you. Most things are, with most people." She unfolded her arms only to refold them higher on her chest. "You don't hear me. That's the problem. I say something and it just goes past you." I walked to the sink, took the container, rinsed it properly, set it in the drying rack. Slow and deliberate, not performative, just done. Then I turned around. "What do you actually need from me tonight?" Real answer, not the argument version. She stared at me for a moment like the question had come from an unexpected direction. Then she looked past me at the window, the same way she'd been doing for weeks, as if the answer to everything existed somewhere just outside the glass and she was waiting for it to clarify itself. "More of your attention," she said finally. "You make time for overtime. You make time for the gym. You make time for Jordan." A pause. "I'm supposed to be grateful for takeout, and how was your day at 9:30 at night?" "Then tonight," I said, phone off, table, "I'm here, we talk." She picked her phone up from the counter and set it back down face first. "I'm tired, Owen. I can't do a whole thing tonight." "Understood." I nodded once. "Not performing, not punishing. Pick the night. Don't be passive-aggressive." "I'm being literal. You said you want my attention. I offered it. You passed. I'm asking you to schedule it instead of accumulating it into a charge against me." She bit her lip, not considering what she wanted to say. That was the tell. She already knew. She was deciding how much of it to say out loud. "I just need some space," she said. "To think." Space for what? For me. Her voice was quieter now, softer, like the sharpness had been a layer over something more uncertain. "I'm confused, Owen. I don't even know how to explain it." "Space is fine," I said. "Space with a shape I can work with. Space with a direction. Space means something if I know what it's supposed to accomplish. What you're describing right now is fog. Why do you always have to dissect everything?" "Because fog moves without warning," I answered, "and I prefer to know the weather." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she grabbed her keys from the counter. "I'm going to see Lily. Don't wait up." The door closed behind her. Not slammed. I noticed that. Controlled. Deliberate. I stood in the spotless kitchen and listened to the quiet that followed, and I filed the quality of that quiet under things worth remembering. The next morning, I made a small adjustment. Not dramatic, not retaliatory, just a recalibration of terms. I took my card off the counter where we'd always left them interchangeable and moved the grocery account into a split arrangement. I drafted a shared chores schedule and put it on the refrigerator, color-coded. I blocked out my calendar for the next 2 weeks. Diana came downstairs and saw me at the table with the clipboard. "What is all this?" "Clarity," I said. "You said you felt like you were carrying everything." Mi pareja, I'm removing the ambiguity. We split costs down the middle from here. Chores are assigned in writing. Mi pareja, nothing falls through the fog. She stared at the chart on the refrigerator like it had said something offensive. That's not a partnership. That's a lease agreement. Then show me partnership, I said evenly. I'm not asking for anything you haven't already named. I'm giving the unnamed a shape. You're punishing me. I'm planning my time, I said, folding the napkin. I have a service call tonight. You're free to see Lily again if you want. The space is yours. She narrowed her eyes. Fine. Do whatever you want. I will, I said, and I meant it without heat. My supervisor, a compact, direct man named Garrett, caught the look on my face when I signed out a diagnostic kit at the job site that morning. He tapped the clipboard and gave me the evaluation of a man who had seen most things. You sleep in the bathtub last night, or just near someone who wished you had. Close to the second one, I said. You turning down the volume or turning up the pressure? Turning down the volume. He grunted, something like approval. Good. Don't bring home weather into my client's walls. By 3 in the afternoon, Diana had sent 3 texts. A photo of her coffee. A message that she was going out with the girls tonight. A link to a show she wanted to watch together when things settle down. I texted back. Got it. Keep me posted. Clean and unambiguous. No warmth subtracted. Just nothing added that wasn't true. When I got home that evening, she was on the couch under a blanket with the particular expression of someone who had rehearsed the next scene while driving. Soft, contrite, eyes doing careful work. I made pasta, she said. I'm sorry about last night. I overreacted. Thanks, I said. I set my toolbox by the door. That's all you're going to say? I warmed a plate and sat across from her at the table. You apologized. I heard it. We're having dinner. You're not going to respond to it. I just did, I said. Would you like to talk tonight? Or are you too tired again? A pause. Maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow then, I said. I finished my plate, stood and reached for my gym bag. Going to meet Jordan for a quick session. Don't wait up. Her mouth opened, then closed. Then, right. Fine. Jordan was leaning on the vending machine in the locker room like he'd been put there for decoration. He's a paramedic with a particular talent for cutting past the surface of things and a sense of humor that runs about 3 beats behind polite. You look like a man who's been demoted from husband to accountant, he said. I set some structures, I told him. She called it roommate behavior. And you took it as a compliment. I took it as confirmation I was doing it right. He studied me. You think there's someone else? I considered that. I think there's something occupying time that isn't me. Could be a friend, could be something else. I'm not going to run investigations based on suspicion. What I know is the pattern. I picked up a towel, and patterns are more honest than explanations. Jordan clapped my shoulder. Keep your head. If the game's already on, the plan is the plan. 2 days after that, Diana came home early. I was in the kitchen finishing coffee when she walked in, and I noticed it immediately. Not hostility, not the accumulated weight of the ongoing argument, something different, something practiced and theatrical, the way people sound when they've been assembling words in a car for 20 minutes before walking through a door. She set her bag down and stood at the table with her palms flat on the surface. I need a break, she said. Define it. A week. Time to clear my head. I'll stay with Lily. No calls, no texts. Address? I said. What? Her address. I don't need it for flowers. I need it for emergencies. You're still my wife. If something happens to someone in your family in the next 7 days, you need to be reachable. She looked at me like I'd found a door she hadn't built in. I don't have the address memorized off the top of my head. Send it when you get there. I'll respect the no-contact window. She exhaled. You're really going to let me just go? You're an adult, I said. If a week of space resolves it, good. If a week of space reveals it, also good. She stared at me. Reveals what? Whatever's actually going on. The silence that followed had a particular texture, the kind that forms when someone realizes the conversation went somewhere they hadn't mapped. No drama? She asked. No drama, I agreed. I walked to the refrigerator, unclipped the calendar, and slid it across to her. Circle the dates. Starting Sunday if you want. She picked up the pen and marked the week with a hand that wasn't quite as steady as her voice. Then she looked at the pantry like she was calculating what to take. Do you need luggage? I asked. She stared at me. I'll pack tonight. I'll help you load the car, I said. I'm also canceling our plans with the Robinsons next week and moving some of my overtime to evenings. You'll have full silence on my end. You're being strange. I'm being organized, I replied. That night she moved through the bedroom like someone staging a performance for a single-person audience, deliberate about what she packed, more deliberate about what she left, a framed photo on her nightstand, her robe on the hook, 2 pairs of shoes she clearly wasn't taking anywhere, placeholders, anchors, things designed to communicate something about return. You're very quiet, she tried. I'm saving the words for when they'll matter. They don't matter now. They will, I said, and I zipped her bag. Sunday morning, I carried her luggage to the trunk of her car. She hugged me at the door like she was checking something, gauging resistance, searching for softness, testing the structure to see if there was a place it might give. I love you, Owen, she said. I just need you to know that. I heard you, I said. Send the address when you get there. She drove away. I stood at the end of the driveway and watched the car until it turned at the corner. Then I went inside. I pulled up the shared account on my phone and set a spending cap. I turned off the joint card alerts. I called the locksmith. By evening, the locks hadn't changed. But the keypad access code was new, not to lock her out, to make sure I made that choice deliberately, rather than having it made for me. Monday, overtime at a commercial site. Then the gym. Tuesday, same. The silence from Diana was complete. No texts, no calls. And I slept the way you sleep when you've put something heavy down that you'd been carrying longer than you realized. Wednesday night, I was finishing a sandwich when the doorbell rang. I opened the door. A woman stood on the porch, early 30s, composed, the specific kind of composed that comes from having decided in the car how the next 10 minutes were going to go. Dark jacket, structured bag over one shoulder, a direct look that had already made several assessments before I'd said a word. Owen, she said. Yes, my name is Sandra. She glanced briefly at the street, then back at me. I need to talk to you. It's about Diana. My mind reached for a reasonable explanation and came back empty. I stepped aside. She entered, moved to the coffee table, and placed a folder on it with the efficiency of someone who had thought carefully about the order of operations. She didn't circle around it. Diana is on a trip, she said, with my husband. Silence is supposed to be neutral. Something to fill or not fill. Right then, silence felt like something that had been installed where a floor used to be. I need proof, I said. Not defensively, clinically, not because I doubt what you're telling me. Because if this is true, I don't want to hear it, I want to see it. Seeing it means I can act on it. I brought proof, she said. She opened the folder. Printed screenshots, hotel confirmation with both names, boarding passes from Sunday's flight, neighboring seats, a property rental by the water, 2 hours from here, timestamps that aligned with the first day of Diana's week to clear her head, and photographs, Diana's face tilted toward the camera in a selfie I'd never been asked to take, the man beside her, tall, light-colored shirt, a small scar near the jaw, wearing the particular ease of someone who had been in this situation before and found it manageable. I studied the photos without speaking. He's your husband, I said. 6 years, she replied. I had a suspicion a month ago. I hired a private investigator last week. The report came to my inbox this afternoon. Your name and address were in Diana's contact card on one of the screenshots. I set the printouts down. Sit, I said. We sat. I poured water because my hands needed something to hold. She didn't touch her glass. Tell me everything, then we plan. His name was Ryan, she said. He'd told her he was attending a regional conference with his department head. He'd packed a suit, a rolling bag, and a story. The investigator had followed him to the airport. He'd met Diana at the gate. They'd flown out Sunday evening, checked into the rental Monday afternoon. The investigator had gone through the trash at the property earlier today, receipts from 2 restaurants and a gift shop near the waterfront. Diana had bought a scarf. Of course she did, I said. She collects them. I heard myself say it the way you hear yourself say something that no longer belongs to you. I didn't know how to find you without making this a spectacle, Sandra said. I don't want a scene. I want the truth in open air with the lights on. I leaned back. You're in the right house. She looked at me steadily. What do you want to do? First, I said, we don't call them. We don't text. We don't give them any signal that the story has changed. Second, we handle paperwork, clean and fast. Third, we're both at my place when they come back. Day 7. No announcement, no preparation time, just consequences. She studied me. You're very calm. I work with electrical systems, I said. Panic trips breakers. You need clear hands when everything's live. She almost smiled. I can appreciate that. I opened my laptop, started drafting separation language. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling my locksmith, she said. Good. I already moved half our savings into a separate account, she added. The joint card is capped. If he wants to buy her something at the pier, he can use cash. Smart, I said. Kids? She asked. No. Us neither. She exhaled something she'd been holding for weeks. Then let's do this properly. Remember that in the description and in the pinned comment you have all our supplements, from fitness to health in every sense of the word. We worked for 2 hours. Not dramatically, not cinematically. 2 people building the architecture of a clean exit across a table while a clock moved toward midnight. We split the shared accounts we could split that night. We scheduled the appointments we'd need the following week. She gave me the address of the rental. I pulled it up on the map and looked at the street for a long moment. A place I had never been, with a man I had never met, in a photograph I had never been asked for, with a scarf that would be packed in my wife's luggage when she came home. What are you going to say when she walks in? Sandra asked. Very little, I said. Words are only worth their weight once respect is gone. I'll let the shape of the room say most of it. She nodded. Same. When she left, she paused at the door. You handled this differently than I expected. I've had time to think about the weather, I said. I just didn't know the storm had already made landfall. Day 7, she said, and she walked down the porch steps and into the dark like someone who had found her footing. I closed the door, leaned my forehead against it for a count of 3. Then I straightened. I didn't call Jordan. I didn't call anyone. I went back to the kitchen, washed the plate from my sandwich, dried it, and put it away. The silence over the next 4 days had a different quality than the previous weeks. Not the hollow silence of a house where something is wrong and unnamed, the quiet of a room being prepared for something necessary. Garrett noticed at the job site on Thursday. He watched me wire a panel with the focused economy of someone whose attention had consolidated into a single point. You're running quiet, he said. Planning, I told him. What kind of planning needs that face? The kind where the party doesn't know there's a guest list. He scratched his jaw. Bring chips, he said, deadpan, and walked away. That evening I stopped by my neighbor's place, Mrs. Okafor, a retired nurse with the patience of someone who had seen most things and the dry wit of someone who had chosen to find them amusing. I asked her if she could be visible on her porch Sunday afternoon around noon. No explanation required. She was the kind of woman who understood when an explanation would be a waste of both people's time. What kind of visible? She asked. The kind that notices a car pulling in. I've been known to water my garden for extended periods, she said. I know, I told her. That's why I'm asking. Saturday night, Sandra texted. Investigator confirms they're leaving the rental Sunday morning. Estimated arrival back here around noon. I wrote back, door will be unlocked at 11:45. One word came back. Good. That night I went through the house methodically. Diana's things, clothes, books, the framed photos, the accumulated objects of a shared life, I moved into labeled boxes, not carelessly, not angrily. With the quiet precision of someone doing what needs doing, I loaded the boxes into my truck before sunrise Sunday morning and drove them to her mother's house 2 neighborhoods over. Her mother opened the door in a robe, blinking against the early light. "Owen," she said, looking at the truck bed. "What is this?" "Deanna asked for a week to think things through," I told her. "She's coming home today. I'm giving her a place to do that thinking that isn't my house. She'll understand when she arrives." Her mother's face went through several calculations. "Did you two? We'll talk later," I said. "Please just keep these until she can sort through them. She'll know what they mean." Her mother nodded slowly. Something in her expression told me she'd been waiting for a version of this conversation for longer than I'd realized. On the drive back, I stopped for coffee. 2 cups, one for me, one for Sandra if she wanted it. No ceremony, no snacks. The house looked exactly like what it was, a room set for a conversation that only worked if both people were present. At 11:40, Sandra arrived. Jeans, plain shirt, hair pulled back. She carried a small folder and wore the expression of someone who had made their peace with what was about to happen. "Ready?" she asked. "Past ready," I said. We sat at the kitchen island. She placed the photographs face down like a hand of cards. I set the separation documents on a clipboard beside them. The door was unlocked. "No yelling," she said quietly. "No yelling," I agreed. We waited. At 7 minutes past noon, the front door opened. Deanna came through the foyer carrying a tote bag and wearing sunglasses she hadn't needed in our zip code. She had color in her cheeks that came from somewhere 2 hours south of here, and she was smiling the private smile of someone who had spent a week inside a story she thought was entirely her own. She saw me. Then she saw Sandra. The smile stayed on her face for about 2 full seconds. Long enough that I could see the exact moment it became an attempt to hold a shape it no longer had a reason to hold. "Babe," she said, setting the tote down on the floor. She glanced at Sandra with the bright confusion of someone selecting an explanation. "Did you have someone come in for the cleaning? I thought we said we'd figure that out after." She was still laughing at her own line when Sandra's chair scraped back from the island. "Enjoy your week with my husband." Sandra's voice was louder than she'd intended it to be, not screaming, but the specific volume of a woman who had spent 5 days building walls around something and had just watched those walls become unnecessary. Diana's entire body went still. The tote was still on the floor. Her sunglasses were still on her face. She looked like someone whose foot had found a step that wasn't there. I can explain." "Don't," Sandra said. Her voice dropped, which was somehow worse than the volume had been. "You bought flights next to each other. You checked in together. You sent him photos from the waterfront while telling him you were confused about your life." She held up one of the photographs. Diana's face tilted toward the camera, Ryan beside her, the pier behind them. "Confused people don't take photos." Diana looked at me. "Owen, I didn't know he was married. He told me they were separated." I heard myself make a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. "You knew you were married. That part wasn't ambiguous." Her mouth opened. No sound came out. She looked back at Sandra, and I watched her try 3 different approaches in the space of 4 seconds before landing on the one she thought might work. "I genuinely didn't know," she said. "He told me." "You knew enough to hide it," Sandra said. She set the photograph on the island face up. "He's wearing the shirt I bought him 6 weeks ago. You touched his arm in that photo. You sent him that photo yourself." A pause. "Confused people don't curate evidence of their confusion." Diana turned to me. "Can we talk about this alone? Please, just us." "No," I said. I slid the clipboard across the island toward her. "The documents are drafted. Your things are at your mother's. The access code has been changed. We're done." She looked at the clipboard, then at me. The sunglasses were still on. She reached up and took them off. which was the first unguarded thing she'd done since walking in. "What documents?" she asked, and her voice was smaller now. "Not the performance register, something underneath." "Separation," I said. "I keep the house, you keep your car. We divide the accounts cleanly, and we do it in writing mi pareja. There are no stories told later about what happened." "That's insane," she whispered. "We can fix this. Owen, we can actually fix this." "You had 7 days to think," I told her. "I used them too. It was one mistake. 2 plane tickets and a rental by the water are not the architecture of a mistake," I said. "A mistake is a single bad decision in a moment of poor judgment. What's in that folder is logistics. It took planning." She gripped the strap of the tote with both hands. "We have history." "We had it," I corrected. "You traded the rest of it for a week and a scarf from a pier shop." Sandra placed a second photograph on the island, Diana's hand in Ryan's. Diana flinched, and I understood then that she had believed, on some level, that the photographs could be argued away. This one couldn't. "Ryan is on his way home right now," Sandra said to me, not to Diana. "He thinks we're having brunch. He has no idea. Use my printer if you need fresh copies of anything," I said. "I have what I need." Sandra gathered the folder. Diana reached out like she could physically intercept the paperwork. "Don't," I said quietly. "You already stopped the other thing." "Owen." Her voice broke on the word, the first genuine fracture in the surface of it. "Can we please talk tonight? I'll tell you all of it. I'll get help. I'll go to counseling. I'll cut off everyone who's been in the way of us." I looked at her for a moment. "You've already shown me who you are under pressure," I said. "Counseling schedules the next conversation. It doesn't rewrite the last one." "Please," she said. "Everyone makes mistakes." I was lost. "I love you." I stood. I pointed with my eyes toward the door. No speech, no scene, just the shape of an ending. She stood there for a long time, long enough that Mrs. Okafor, who had been watering her garden for an unusually extended period, probably heard the specific quality of the silence from the porch next door. Then Diana picked up her tote, turned and walked out. The door closed behind her. Not slammed, not dramatic. The quiet click of something completing a circuit. Sandra exhaled like a diver who'd been down longer than she planned. "You're colder than I expected," she said. "I'm not cold," I told her. "I'm finished." She nodded, adjusted the bag on her shoulder. "I'm going home," she said. "He'll be there soon." "Let him walk in first," I advised. "Don't meet him at the door with the folder. Let him be in the room, in his normal posture, acting like nothing has changed. That's the moment." She looked at me for a second. Then she said, "Thank you for not making me do this alone." "You weren't alone," I said. "It just felt that way until today." She left. I brewed coffee, called my brother to let him know I might need his help moving some furniture later in the week. He said, "Finally," without asking a single clarifying question, and I laughed. The first real one I'd managed in days. An hour later, Sandra texted. He tried to talk his way out. I put the photographs on the table. He stopped talking. "He's packing a bag. He's moving into short-term housing tonight." I typed back, "Good." She wrote, "You okay?" I sent, "Better than fine." Monday at work had the particular quality of a day that knows it's part of a longer arc, purposeful and unhurried. Jordan met me in the parking lot after shift. "You look like you lost weight you didn't know you were carrying," he said. "Something like that," I agreed. "You want to get food?" "Not tonight," I told him. "I'm finishing the clean-out. The great division of the shared life," he said, not quite joking. "Something like that." He looked at me more carefully. "You all right, man?" "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm clear. That's different." He nodded. "Deanna's friend Maya told me she's been calling it a separation like she announced it, like it was her idea. I considered this. She can name it whatever she needs to," I said. "I already closed the account. The label she puts on the shelf doesn't reopen it." At home that night, I finished boxing the last of her things: books, the mugs from trips we'd taken in years that felt like a different marriage, the framed photos from the hallway. I kept the one of me and my dad from a fishing weekend when I was 9. It's not framed expensively, but it belongs to me in a way nothing else in that stack did. Everything else I set in the garage for pickup. I scrubbed the kitchen, put new sheets on the bed, opened the window, not for symbolism, just for air. Remember that in the description and in the pinned comment you have all our supplements, from fitness to health in every sense of the word. Tuesday, Diana texted, "Can we talk? Just 30 minutes. I need 30 minutes. I set the phone down, picked it up 10 minutes later and typed, "No, everything you need is at your mother's place." She replied, "Please." I didn't answer, not because I was holding something against her, because the door was closed. I don't open doors that lead to rooms I've already moved out of. Wednesday afternoon, Sandra called. "He signed," she said. "He tried to negotiate first." I laid out the photographs and he stopped. "The papers are done." I told her, "Good." She said, "I'm going for a drink tonight to market." That sounds sadder out loud than it did in my head. "It doesn't sound sad," I told her. "It sounds honest. Murphy's has that kind of lighting." Seven, she said. Murphy's was half full of the usual Wednesday crowd. Retirees watching a muted game. Two men in ties having the kind of argument that sounds like work but is really about something older. Sandra was at the door when I arrived, wearing the expression of someone who wasn't entirely sure they were allowed to feel okay yet. I waved her over. She sat. "You look less braced," I said. "I slept," she answered. "Actually slept. I didn't think I would." "We underestimate ourselves after something like this," I said. "We assume we'll be wrecked longer than we are. We're usually wrong." The bartender came by. We ordered water with lime. He handled it without ceremony. Sandra raised her glass. "To clean exits." I touched mine to hers. "To not buying explanations we don't need." She looked at me with the particular attention of someone who had been watching how people behave under pressure and had recently revised their models. "You really don't spin," she said. "Nothing to spin," I told her. "It happened," we responded. "The response is done." We talked about practical things first. She was a project coordinator for a medical clinic. She ran in the mornings, preferably before anyone else was awake. She had a thing about old bridges, collected facts about them the way some people collect stamps. I told her about Garrett's running war with mislabeled equipment, about Mrs. Okafor and her strategic gardening. We laughed once, real and brief, not because anything was funny, but because we could, and that itself was a thing worth noting. At 9, we walked to the parking lot. She looked at me like someone considering a road they hadn't decided to take. "Don't read this wrong," she said, "but thank you for being a particular way about this. I like being able to look in the mirror without having to arrange my face first," I said. We hugged, steady, not complicated. Thursday morning brought the inevitable. Diana's car was at the curb at 7:45. She rang the bell in the way people ring a bell when they want you to hear the intention behind the pressure. Not impatient, not aggressive, careful, deliberate. Like the ring itself was a kind of apology. She was holding a paper bag. Her hair was done in the way she did it when she wanted to look like she wasn't trying. "I brought you food," she said through the screen. "From that place you like on Merchant Street." "I appreciate it," I said. "You can leave it on the porch rail if you want." "Can we just talk for 5 minutes, just on the porch?" "No, you're being cruel." "I'm being clear," I said. Clarity feels like cruelty when someone's been living in ambiguity. That's not my problem to solve. You won't even tell me why. "I don't need to," I said. "You were there, you know what happened. You're not confused about the facts, you're hoping I am." She looked down at the paper bag, then up. "I miss you. I reach for my phone to text you and then I remember." Her voice shifted into its softest register. "I'll go to counseling. I'll prove it. I'll show you who I actually am without all the..." "You showed me who you are under pressure," I said. That's the more accurate data point. What people do when they think no one's looking is more informative than who they say they are at the front door with food. I opened the screen enough to take the bag and set it on the rail. Not cruelty, just closure. Goodbye, Diana. Her face moved through several expressions. Then it settled into the one that had always been her last resort. The warning. You're going to regret this, she said. I regret not drawing these lines sooner, I replied. I'm correcting that now. She stood there for a moment longer, a person measuring the width of a gap and finding it wider than expected. Then she turned and walked back to her car. Friday, Sandra texted a photo. The signed separation papers spread out on a table. Underneath she wrote, "He's gone. Short-term rental near his office." I wrote back, "You did it," she replied. "We both did." Saturday, the social circles processed the information in the way social circles do, in relay, with editorial additions, arriving at me via the Robinsons. Cynthia called with the particular energy of someone who considers themselves a neutral party and isn't. Diana says you blindsided her. Leah told me you boxed her things and put them out. I moved her things to her mother's place, I said. Diana had asked for space. I gave her space with a permanent address. She took a trip with a man who isn't her husband. I gave her what she was looking for, just made it structural. Cynthia sputtered. Her husband took the phone. You doing okay? Marcus asked. Better than I expected, I said. Still coming to the cookout next month. Don't worry about managing the seating. I mean, it might be. I didn't do anything I'd hide, I said. I'll be there. A pause. Respect, he said. That night I sat on the back porch with a beer I didn't finish, listening to the neighborhood settle into its Saturday rhythm. Mrs. Okafor's light was still on across the way. Somewhere down the block, a dog registered its opinion of something. The kind of evening that doesn't need commentary. 2 months went by. I replaced the couch, the one we'd bought together at a sale 3 years ago, the one she'd always said she wanted to reupholster. I fixed the laundry room door that had been squeaking since February. I picked up a second-hand truck that didn't complain about lumber or early mornings or either of the things I needed it for. I dropped an extra shift from my schedule and used the time to drive up to the lake with Jordan for a weekend. We fished. We argued about the only correct way to cook a steak. We didn't talk about anything that had happened in the previous 60 days, and it was the most useful thing either of us could have done. Sandra and I texted occasionally, met for coffee twice at a place near the river that had good windows and didn't mind people who sat for a while. We didn't flirt. We kept things at the level that made sense given where we both were. 2 people who had come through something complicated and were each in their own way rebuilding something that required attention and care and not being rushed. One Saturday she needed help moving a bookshelf she'd bought at an estate sale. I came over. We carried it across her living room. She handed me water and smiled. You keep showing up, she said. I like things to be where they're supposed to be, I told her. It's a professional habit. She laughed. We stood there for a moment, the bookshelf between us, the afternoon light coming through the windows, something in the air that wasn't ready to be named and didn't need to be. Not yet, she said softly. Not yet, I agreed. We marked the finalized papers at a diner on a Tuesday afternoon, at noon, because by that point we had both concluded that rules applied when they served a purpose, and otherwise they were just furniture blocking the door. She ordered pancakes, I ordered coffee. We sat by the window and acknowledged out loud what we'd walked through, and the fact that neither of us had turned into something lesser on the other side of it. When people asked, and people did ask, because they always do, I gave them the version that didn't require elaboration. We grew in different directions. It ended cleanly. I'm well. If they pressed, I said it again with less emphasis, and they took the hint. I had nothing to prove to the social record. Diana tried twice more. Late messages, the kind that arrive after 10 at night and carry the particular tone of someone who has been sitting with a glass of something and a different version of events than the one that actually happened. I didn't respond. Not out of punishment. The door was closed. I don't perform openness for people who treated it as a liability. Months later, I saw her in the grocery store. She was wearing the scarf from the pier, the one from the receipt in the investigator's report, the one she'd bought while I was sleeping in a house with a changed access code and a calmer mind than I'd had in years. She clocked me from 2 aisles over and performed not seeing me with the specific effort of someone who is very aware of being seen. I let her have it. I had lumber in my cart and a Saturday plan that needed the afternoon. I changed my mornings, ran before the neighborhood fully woke up, had coffee on the porch, and watched the light come up over Mrs. Okafor's fence. Started a deck in the backyard, 1 board at a time, measured twice, cut once, the whole thing planned on graph paper before I touched a tool. Garrett stopped by one Saturday with a level and a suspicious expression and ended up helping all afternoon. He didn't comment on any of it. At dusk, he held the level against the last board, checked the bubble, and said, "Straight, that's the goal," I said. He snorted. "Some people can't hit it with both hands." Jordan met someone, a teacher with a good sense of humor and apparently the patience of a geological formation. He started doing the particular thing that newly happy people do, which is try to distribute the happiness by offering to introduce you to people. I declined all 3 candidates he suggested, not because I wasn't open, because I'd spent enough of my life filling silence with whatever was adjacent to it. The next version of things was going to start with intention, not proximity. Sandra and I crossed paths at a charity run her clinic co-sponsored. She was holding up a sign for her team at the finish line, and she waved from 30 yards out with the energy of someone who had rediscovered what mornings felt like without dread in them. We stood at the water table after. "How's the deck?" she asked. "1 more weekend," I said. "Come test it when it's done. Bring shoes that can handle pressure." "I have a pair that's been waiting for a reason," she said. We smiled, still steady, still not in a hurry about what neither of us had named. On a late fall Saturday, I put down the last board of the deck just before 4 in the afternoon, wiped my hands on my jeans, stepped back and looked at it. Not fancy, not elaborate, not the kind of thing anyone would photograph, just level and solid and mine. I had built it in the same 6 months I'd lost my marriage, found out who I was under pressure, and figured out what I was actually willing to carry. I texted Sandra, "Deck is done." She replied, "I'll bring something to drink." I wrote, "Come ready to hear about wood grain. I have opinions." She wrote, "I like people who have opinions about the things they build." When she arrived, the sun was already wrapping up. We sat on the new steps with drinks in hand, and the neighborhood settling into its evening sounds around us. She looked at the yard. "You built this in the same year that could have taken you under," she said. "It didn't," I said. "It showed me the load-bearing stuff. What holds, what doesn't, what I'd been propping up that wasn't worth propping. And what's worth keeping?" she asked. "Standards," I said. "Quiet plans, people who mean what they say." I looked over at her. No fog. She turned and looked back at me, the particular look of someone who has been reading the room carefully for a long time and has finally decided they trust what they're seeing in it. "Same," she said. We sat with that. The quiet had weight to it, the good kind, the kind that doesn't need filling. I went to bed that night knowing something I hadn't known a year ago, that I could walk through something that should have broken me and come out the other side with my hands steady and my standards intact, that I could close a door without needing to slam it to feel like it was closed, that I could sit in the wreckage of something I'd believed in and build something new from the same ground without pretending the wreckage wasn't there. That's the only version of this I want to tell. Pay attention to the small storms. They're almost always announcing something larger. Don't negotiate with fog. Set your terms before someone else sets them for you. And when a person shows you clearly and consistently that their own comfort matters more to them than your shared foundation, open the door and step out of the way. They already know. They're just hoping you don't. The house is quiet now, not empty. There's a new couch by the window, a second-hand truck in the driveway that has never once complained. A deck out back that's level and solid and didn't cost anyone else anything to build. Friends who show up with levels and dry commentary and no requirement for explanation. And on the porch steps, in the late fall light, a woman who knows the value of straight lines and doesn't need to make a show of the ones she draws. It's not a movie. It's better. It's mine. If you made it this far, thank you for being here. Leave a comment below and tell me, what would you have done differently? I read everything. See you in the next one.